Bangwanani Malelepo, Vukenjani, Ketwas, Wanabe Africa. Welcome to Africa. Good morning. The news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Berry and Glenn Orashipura. How are you, Glenn?
I'm doing very well. I know you're doing very well.
I'm doing fantastic as well.
Arsenal did the things that must be done.
Did what needed to be done, top of the table. It's where we like to be. Very comfortable.
Where we should always be, right?
Where we deserve to be. The
yes.
elephant is back, as they say.
Oh, let's get into what you can expect in today's broadcast. Gunfire heard in Sierra Leone capital after attack on barracks. Madagascar president re-elected as opposition irregularities, and Oscar Pistorius to be freed on parole, will also be crossing over to Zimbabwe, speaking to Talen Gore, who'll be filling us in on the latest news there. Do stay tuned for this and more on Africa Good Morning.
Neopaints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neopaints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neopaints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
Hello and welcome to today's Sports Rep Show.
I am your host, Jesse Jackson Kauraifa. In replay, Namibia, who had won the toss for the first time on this tour.
Good day everyone, time for international sports news, starting off with tennis news, both on the WTA for women's and
We start our top stories in South Africa, where a patient died at the entrance of Northam Clinic, Limpopo, on Saturday after a security guard denied him entry to the facility. The man's family had brought him to the clinic around 3 a.m. on Saturday. At the time, the patient was bleeding from all his orifices, according to the Limpopo Department of Health. But instead of allowing the family access, the security guard informed them that due to load shedding, they would not open for them, but instead gave them contact numbers for emergency medical services. According to the department, the man had already died by the time the ambulance arrived. Nurses on duty were only informed after the patient had died, the department added. MEC Poppy Ramatuba said that they reiterate their plea to security guards to adhere to their duties and refrain from triaging patients, a responsibility outside their expertise.
In our next story, gunfire could be heard in some neighborhoods of Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown, on Sunday afternoon following an attempt by unidentified gunmen to break into a military armory. The government declared a nationwide curfew after assailants attacked the armory at the Wilberforce barracks in the early hours of Sunday. The assailants were rebuffed by the country's security forces, it said in a statement. Now, the public is assured that the government and our state security forces are in control, Information Minister Shona Ba said in a statement. Now, to enable the security forces to continue the process of apprehending the suspects, a nationwide curfew has been declared with immediate effect across the country. We strongly advise citizens to stay indoors, the statement added. The political situation in Sierra Leone has been tense since President Julius Maada Bio was re-elected in June.
Now, Madagascar's president, Andry Rajoelina, has effectively secured a third term after the electoral body said he had obtained the most votes in an election marked by low turnout and an opposition boycott. Provisional results announced on Saturday by CENI at the end of tallying showed Rajoelina garnered 58.9% of the vote, followed by Siteni Radriana Soliniako, a lawmaker, who got 14.4%. The country's High Constitutional Court is mandated to announce final results within 9 days, after the poll body declares provisional results. Malagasy people who now refuse to choose the wrong path, who no longer accept to take the path of unrest as democracy is exercised through elections and not through streets in the address. This was according to Rajolina upon the announcement of the results. But Randriana Soloniako told AFP News Agency on Saturday he had appealed to the country's apex court to demand the cancellation of the vote result.
Hamas on Friday released 24 hostages it held captive in Gaza for weeks, and Israel freed 39 Palestinians from prison in the first stage of a swap under a 4-day ceasefire that offered a small glimmer of relief to both sides. Israelis cheered as 13 Israeli women and children emerged free from Gaza. Most were in their 70s or 80s, and the youngest was a 2-year-old. Also released were 10 people from Thailand, including 4 who had not been officially listed as abducted and 1 from the Philippines, Thailand's foreign ministry announced on Saturday morning. Now 24 Palestinian women and 15 teenagers held in Israeli prisons in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem were freed. Their families rejoiced to be reunited with them. Now, under the deal, Hamas is to release at least 50 hostages and Israel 150 Palestinian prisoners over the 4 days.
So women and children, teenagers being held captive in Israel. One wouldn't have assumed that, considering that Israel's recent launch of attacks was allegedly based on hostages being taken. I'm serious, I'm really surprised that Israel had hostages of themselves all along, women and children. Okay. Former Paralympic champion Oscar Pistorius is to be freed from jail on parole nearly 11 years after murdering his girlfriend Rieva Steenkamp. He shot her multiple times through a bathroom door on Valentine's Day in 2013, later claiming he mistook her for a burglar at the Pretoria home. Pistorius, now 37, was sentenced by a South African court in 2016 to serve 13 years and 5 months in prison. The parole board has set his release for 5 January 2024. Once released, Pistorius will be monitored by the authorities until his sentence officially expires, just like all other parolees, the Department of Correctional Services said on Friday. If he wants to move house or get a job during that time, he will have to notify his parole officer. Pistorius will also have to attend therapy sessions, according to the Steenkamp family's spokesman. In a letter read out to the parole board during Friday's hearing, Steenkamp's mother said she did not oppose his release, but wondered whether Pistorius's huge anger issues were truly dealt with in prison. It is very interesting, and I do wonder how many other prisoners who have murdered women can come out before their sentence of 13 years.
Exactly.
That's an interesting one. Certainly keep an eye on with regards to the rule of law in South Africa. But those have been our top stories on Africa Good Morning, and after the break, we swing over to Zimbabwe.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Neo Paints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neo Paints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neo Paints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
Now 2 serial robbers and rapists are jailed for 95 years each. Here to bring us this story and more news from the House of Stone is Talent Gore. Good morning, Talent.
Good morning, Diana. Good morning, Ashwin, and Africa. Good morning.
It's actually Glenora, but yes. Can you get into your first story, please?
Two Harare men who committed a spate of robberies and rape have been sentenced to 95 years in jail each. McDonald Ukwimwe and Trimon Komazana, 28, were found guilty on 9 counts of robbery and sentenced to 72 years each before a 20-year jail term was added after they were convicted of rape. They were also convicted of impersonating police officers and malicious damage to property, which they were sentenced to 1 year and 2 years respectively. The convicts masqueraded as detectives stationed at CID Southton in Harare, enforcing COVID-19 regulations, arrested the complainants, claiming they would take them to Warren Park Police Station. On their way to Warren Park Police Station, they then raped the convicts on separate occasions along the way before robbing them before robbing them of their valuables. So they were arrested in last year in May, and they were sentenced just last week, and they were slapped with a 95-year jail term each.
All right, so Zimbabwe is committed to the protection of heritage sites. What brought on this statement?
Yes, Zimbabwe is committed to enhancing its capacity to protect its World Heritage sites from climate change and ensure their integrity is secure from the harmful effects of the global phenomenon. Well, a senior government official has said in Zimbabwe there are 5 heritage sites, which are the Victoria Falls, the Mana Pools, the Great Zimbabwe Monument, Kami Ruins, and Matobo National Park. Speaking during the ongoing 42nd UNESCO General Council meeting, Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Management Authority Director said there is mounting evidence that climate change is affecting World Heritage sites, and in Zimbabwe, both natural and cultural sites are affected. So they say that as a government, they had come up with a plan, or rather several initiatives, to ensure that the heritage sites are protected from the effects of climate change. So we're going to be witnessing the ZimParks enhancing or enforcing these initiatives to ensure that the heritage sites, especially Victoria Falls and Mana Pools, are protected from the effects of climate change. They say that they're going to start ensuring this, or they're going to start implementing these initiatives earlier next year.
Now, in your next story, or rather in a worrisome statistics, only 10% of children with disabilities attend school, according to UNICEF. Can you get into that?
Yes, the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, has said that an estimated 10% of children with disabilities in Zimbabwe have access to education. UNICEF said this in a message to commemorate World Children's Day. On Monday's commemorations were held in Beitbridge, and UNICEF said that poverty and disabilities are among the main triggers for children in primary school not to be in school. It is estimated that only 10% of children with disabilities are today in school, UNICEF said. So they also say that children with disabilities are often deprived of their right to education, as schools and teachers are lacking the resources, training, and skills to ensure inclusive education. So you find out that most children who are disabled in Zimbabwe, they are not going to school because of this, because the teachers, they do not have adequate skill to ensure that they can be able to teach those children with disabilities. So you find out that most of them, they are at home and they are not in schools. Only those parents who can afford private school, who can afford private education, can then send or enroll their children to schools, or rather have a home training for their schools. But for the majority of them, those who can't afford to do that, their children, they are not being sent to school. They end up being on the street of Harare, begging for money in the streets.
A truly saddening situation, which I certainly hope can be tackled soon. Thank you very much, Talent Kore, for bringing us the news stories from Zimbabwe.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
good having you on Africa. Good morning. And in just another update from Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe's government has started restricting public gatherings and food vending while monitoring burials in all areas affected by cholera after cases of the disease spiked this week. New cholera cases in the southern African country tripled from 437 to 1,259, the biggest jump since the latest outbreak of the waterborne disease, which started in February. This has triggered panic in the country, where more than 4,000 people died from cholera in 2008. To date, the country has recorded 155 deaths linked to cholera from 8,787 cases, according to the Health Ministry. Now, the authorities last week declared a state of emergency in the capital, Harare, which has the highest number of new infections. On Friday, residents in Harare's low-income Kowadzana suburb, where 7 of the capital's 13 cholera deaths were reported, complained about erratic supplies of clean water, uncollected garbage, and raw sewage flowing in the streets. All right, those have been the news stories in and around Zimbabwe. We're going to head to the weather predictions just before economic news. In economic news, Kenya's President William Ruto has announced that 35 state-owned companies are ready to be privatized, as it is currently running inefficiently due to bureaucratic red tape. Al Jazeera reports the Kenyan National Treasury warned in September 2023 of a looming debt crisis in the country as a result of global shocks. The Kenyan people have been protesting at the rising cost of food and petrol prices in recent months. Now, while the government has been forced to cut spending, including the cutting of trips by government officials and trimming its debt to, among others, the International Monetary Fund, an enormous burden has been placed on citizens by the government to pay additional taxes to ensure the completion of infrastructure projects in the country.
Now, our next story, the appetite of French companies to invest in Tanzania is growing, with 13 operators of small and medium enterprises from France making a 3-day visit in search of market and business opportunities in the East African nation. Now, the French ambassador in Tanzania, Nabil Haloui, during the visit said that the SMEs conducted personalized and business-to-business meetings with their Tanzanian counterparts in both the public and private sectors.
Let's head over to the indicators just before Ari joins us for the sport. All right, Ari, we don't have much time, but if you can wrap it up right after talking about Arsenal, I will have zero issues. Take it away.
Yes, good morning, Ashwin. Yes, all I need to say to make your week a happy week is Arsenal on top of the leaderboard. They had a good one away to Brentford, 1-0. Late goal from Kai Havertz of Germany, but it was in the 89th minute, but it was good enough for Arsenal to win. And 30 points on the log now, leading just behind them, 29 points Manchester City, and then 28 points Liverpool. They shared points. That was at the Etihad Stadium. It was 1-1, that game between Manchester City and Liverpool over the weekend. Aston Villa, also a tough game for them against Tottenham Hotspur, but they won at Tottenham Hotspur 2-1. So they're up in 4th position. And then it's Manchester United. They're up in 6th position at the moment, 24 points. That was after beating Everton at home. That was, at Everton at 3-0. So a great one for Manchester United. Tough at the top at the moment. We'll see how it ends in the season. Arsenal now playing home against Wolverhampton, and Manchester City at home against Tottenham Hotspur. On to tennis news, and it's the Davis Cup. It's the men's team tournament competition. They call it the World Cup of Tennis. It's Italy that won the title. They won it for the second time in their history. The last time was 47 years ago in 1976. And it was mainly because of Yannick Sinner. It was 2-0 they beat Australia in the final, but importantly enough, in the semi-final, it was Italy that beat Serbia, and it was Yannick Sinner that came back from 3 match points down in the semi-final to beat Novak Djokovic, and so a great win for Italy in the Davis Cup men's team competition. Deserved winners after 47 years. On to motor racing news. Again, as always, on the Monday, I say Max Verstappen has won. He won again. There's no more races in 2023, so that's it. He won 19 out of 22 races. Incredible performance by Max Verstappen. Red Bull Honda really dominating, lots of chasing to do from the other teams. It was also in the team competition, Mercedes-Benz that ended second behind Ferrari. Just briefly, also rugby news. With South African teams did a lot better. It is still Glasgow Warriors. Glasgow Warriors leading in the English the United Rugby Championship. They've got 25 points after 6 games, but the Bulls up to number 3. They beat Connor 53-27 convincingly. The Lions up to 10th. They beat Zebra 61-19, and the Sharks up to 14th, beating Dragons 53-27. Stormers lost that away game in Cardiff, lost all their touring games, but they at home in Cape Town this coming weekend against Zebra. Hopefully they can win. So that's all the sporting news for this week. Hope it's a brilliant sport week and week for everyone. And we talk international sport news again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Ari. Thank you very much for the updates. Highlights after the break. Diving straight into our highlights from this morning. Patient dies in front of Limpopo clinic after security guard denied him access due to load shedding. Gunfire heard in Sierra Leone capital after attack on barracks. And Kenya tightens economic belt and privatizes 35 firms.
And with that, we've come to the end of our broadcast. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Monday morning. From me, Glenn Orashipura.
And me, Ashwin Bedi, Swera Shakanaka.